Okay, so today we are going to be learning about Python classes. This is hopefully going to be the last video in this series, and what we're going to be doing is we are going to be looking at class inheritance and subclasses. So we're going to make a new file called, let's just call it inheritance.py. Actually, we'll call it main.py. There we go. Main.py already exists. Aha, what is going on here? Why? Ah, yes, this is from the previous lesson. So let's get rid of this actually. Okay. So as you know, when you code with me, the lessons I tend to have are usually based around games or things that are quite interesting to build. So using that same theme, we're going to make a class weapon. And well, what does a weapon do? Well, we're going to define that in a second, but first, let's actually make sure that it calls itself correctly. So self, name, damage. There we go. Now, self name is equal to name, of course. We also have self.damage is going to equal to damage. Very good. Perfect. Now, what can a weapon do? So what method should we give this weapon? Well, it should be able to attack, right? So we'll call it self, and then we're going to say print uh, f string. We'll say self.name, name, attacks, and deals self.damage, damage. There we go. Perfect. Now, if we made a weapon class, so for example, if we said weapon is equal to weapon, like so, we'll give it a name of, let's give it a name of, what should we call this? Sword. And we'll give some damage of maybe 15. Let's see if that works. Ah, yes. Now we also need to call the attack method, so weapon dot, uh, there we go. And now it should print something to our console. Yes, sword attacks and deals 15 damage. Wonderful. And let's just call this a straight sword. Be more specific. This is a basics type of sword you get in games. Really good. So the sword attacks and deals 15 damage. Let's actually say straight sword 2. Straight sword. Okay. That should be more specific. Wonderful. Now, if you are familiar with some types of games, you'll know that some weapons have special effects. So we can make special weapons. So we can say that a weapon has a bleed effect or a poison effect or a burn effect. And that is so that when you hit the opponent enough times, what will happen is they'll start bleeding and they'll lose a lot of health at one time, or they'll be poisoned and they'll lose health over time. And if they're burned, then yeah, of course, they lose health over time too. Perfect. So we don't want to write that in here because not all weapons are going to be able to have this functionality of being able to bleed an opponent or poison an opponent. So what do we do? Well, to define a subclass, we use the parent class as an argument. So I'm going to show you an example. So we're going to have a class of bleed, and we're going to pass weapon with this. So this is the parent class. Weapon is the parent class, and bleed is the child class, right? Because the child inherits from the parent. Just much like in real life, if someone does die, they usually give their things to their children, right? Very good. So we're going to define it in the same way. So we're going to say init self, name, damage, and bleed damage. You can see that I'm giving it all the same things as the initial parent plus the bleed damage that I want to give to it. Okay. So we'll say super dot init is equal to, or not equal to name damage. There we go. Perfect. Uh, this this just calls the weapon's initial setup. If that makes sense. You don't actually need to know exactly how it works, but that's kind of what it does. We'll say self dot bleed damage is equal to bleed damage. So we're going to define what the bleed damage is going to be. Good. Now the method it's going to have is going to be attack. It's going to refer to itself, and we're going to say print. Let's do f string. So we'll say self. This should be in parentheses or curly braces. Self.name slashes and deals self.damage damage. There we go. And we also need to say something like this. The enemy is also bleeding now, and they take extra damage. And the extra damage is going to be, let's say, self-dealt bleed damage. Well, not let's say, but that is going to be what it's going to be. Okay, good. So now if we call this weapon class, well, it should be super easy. So a normal weapon is going to be like so. We'll just copy and paste this here. And let's actually label our code too, so you can see what's happened. So this is the parent class, and this is the child class, like so. Really good. Now, this is the normal weapon. So put here normal, normal. And the bleed weapon is going to be defined in an interesting way. So how do we define it? Well, we define it by using the object from the child. So we'll say axe. Actually, we'll just say cursed sword is equal to bleed. We'll give it three parameters. The parameter is going to be the name. So we'll say bloody. Actually, we'll call it basic. There we go. And the name will be bloody axe. There we go. Bloody axe. The basic damage is 12, and the bleed damage is going to be 7. Because I mean, if you can imagine, if you hit someone enough with an axe, enough for them to bleed, they're probably going to be losing a lot of blood over time, right? So now we'll say basic axe, and use a method attack. And let's see what happens here. So the straight sword attacks and deals 15 damage. This is this part here. And then the bloody axe slashes and deals 12 damage, which is this part. And the enemy is also bleeding, and now they take 7 damage. Now you can do the same thing, right, with poison. So if you want to, what I would like to invite you to do is to make a class that is a class with poison, pass the parent to it, use the same setup. So all you got to do is just copy this, but instead of bleed damage, you put in the variable you want to use. So maybe it'll be poison damage or poison meter or whatever you want to call it. Make sure it's descriptive and simple and not too complicated. And then, yeah, you can instantialize your object using the method here below. So you just, pass it through to a variable, and then you attach the method to the variable, and then it will do the action you've defined in the child class, which is inherited from the parent class. Now, I know I've been using a lot of technical terms recently, and it's super important, guys, that you understand what these technical terms are, because if I was to explain this without technical terms, this video would probably be about 3 or 4 times longer. Well, at the very least 2 times longer. Let's say that, just to be sure, just to be safe. Using these technical terms saves a lot of time. So make sure you're understanding what I do, what I say method, object, parameters, functions, arguments. These things seem like super trivial and not important. And not necessary, but they are extremely important, and it's going to be very helpful when you start reading things online on how to do different things in Python. So that is subclasses and inheritance. Super easy, not too difficult. If you did part 1 and part 2, this shouldn't be too difficult at all. So, guys, I'll see you in the next lesson, and hopefully you have a wonderful, wonderful day.